the whole NICU is just flooded with photobiomodulation, right? So
Yes.
somehow
Yeah.
only that subset of doctors and nurses that are working with pediatrics and the tiny infants understand light therapy. The rest, especially in the US, the rest of the medical world goes, oh, there's no research on that. It's like, look, there's 10,000 papers. How many would you like?
Welcome to the podcast. I'm Tracy Donegan. Today I'm speaking with Aubrey-Chimene, also known as the Light Lady. Kay is a founder of the Photonic Therapy Institute and teaches targeted best practices to accelerate the benefits of photobiomodulation, also known as red light therapy. Now I bring you Aubrey-Chimene.
Welcome to my next podcast. Aubrey-Chimene is joining us today. From where are you today?
I am in Sonoita, Arizona, which is right
Arizona.
on the Mexican border. We're at about 5,000 feet in the mountains here in Arizona. We stay a lot cooler than Phoenix and Tucson. So we
Beautiful.
had some snow and ice last week, but today it'll be 70 and gorgeous, and I should be out playing with my horses.
Oh, that sounds ideal. It is. I'm in Texas, and it's we had a freeze this week, but it's sunny skies today. But thank you so much for joining me. I have been really looking forward to picking your brain about light therapy and light medicine and what it is, because I've been kind of immersing myself in this research and reading lots of books about this. It's not a new therapy, but I think it's just kind of reaching the masses in the last couple of years.
Right.
And it feels like there's everywhere I look on YouTube, it's the bro science, it's about recovery after exercise and making yourself stronger. And as I've been going through the literature, I found so many applications for women's health,
Definitely.
fertility, pregnancy, although that is we're not going to go there today because there has been no research and may not
Right.
be any research. But Michael Hamblin has his own opinions on this. Postpartum and all of the little cuts and bruises and tooth extractions and things that come with having a family and having pets.
Right.
So I'm interested in that aspect. So tell me a little bit, how did you find yourself in this work?
Well, I originally was going to go to vet school. And I was working I did not get accepted right out of college because I had a 3.68 GPA. And back in those days, women had to have a 3.95 or better and a lot of money to donate. So I ended up they said, go into graduate school. All right. If you get into a graduate school, get a couple of years under your belt in a related field, then you can get in. So I started working at the University of Arizona in biochemistry and doing graduate work. And life did what life does. I got married and, things went down. And I actually got, I won't say saved, but diverted from that very allopathic approach. And by my late 20s, early 30s, I was very sick. I'd been living on a typical North American diet. I stood up in 1992. I was 32 years old. I stood up and my foot broke. It turned out I had horrific osteoporosis. I had a lot of arthritis that I came by naturally. My grandmother, when she was in her 30s, her fingers had all curled up, and I was starting to curl up. And luckily, they say you're going to find the right things. And I got in with some mentors that started teaching me about holistic nutrition. And I had a friend get me back on a horse. I'd ridden constantly until my early 20s. Then I went to college. And so here I am in my 30s. I'm very sick, but I have a friend that gets me back on a horse and I start riding again. And I met up with an acupuncturist who was a crazy man, and he got us doing endurance riding. So then I ended up buying a horse who was the spitting image of the horse I had grown up on. And we started doing long distance riding. We were training 10, 15, 20 miles a day, 3 or 4 days a week. And the acupuncturist was working on me, and I started learning about nutrition. But that time, that horse that I had purchased, I'd had it vet checked, but I didn't have x-rays and ultrasounds done. And it turned out he had old damage in his legs, old bowed tendons, which means he had ripped the suspensory ligaments in his front legs at one point. Somebody was off cowboying him, doing something stupid. And he had a lot of scar tissue in his legs that I didn't know about. We start doing this training, and we're doing lots of warm-ups and so on. But we went off to our first endurance ride. We did a 25-mile ride, and he totally tore both suspensory ligaments again. So it was called a double bow. Because of all the scar tissue preventing the ligaments from moving, they tore again. And both vets at the race said, he's hamburger, you'll never ride him again. Pick out a halter to bury him in. And I was heartbroken because I'd done this to him, right? And he was bringing me back to health. He was getting me back and moving again. And so luckily my vet, who was not at the race, I got home and my vet came out and looked at him and she said, I've been reading about these light therapy wraps. And this is the early 1990s. So, this was very new. The LED, the research was coming along on lasers and all of that, but this was in the equine world. They were, they're 20 years ahead of what we do with the humans because that's where we test it, right? Is on the animals. So I started, she said, I'd read about these wraps. So I went, boom, did not tell my husband how much I put on our credit card because they were the same amount of money then as they really are almost today. So I, took my credit card down, bought a couple of these wraps, and started lighting him up twice a day. And one of the signs of bowed tendons is they're called this because the back of the leg bows out because the ligament has ripped in half, right? And so makes this big C. It's called a bow. And I called her less than 30 days later and I said, I need you to come back out and do a new ultrasound because his legs are flat and he's not limping. And she says, no. It's 6 months to repair. I can see we might get a little speed, but not a month. I said, look, I've got a science background. I need you to come out and re-ultrasound. Okay. She was astonished. We did new ultrasounds. He had laid down all but one little pinpoint hole of collagen for all new ligaments, and he'd broken down about half that scar tissue that we found because his legs were full of all these old adhesions. So I had permission to start hand walking him at that point. And I was walking him, first day was 10 minutes, the next day's 11 minutes, 1 extra minute a day. And I called her at 60 days and I said, we need new ultrasound. She said, you're spending a lot of money. She said, look, I got to know. So we got in there and at 60 days, he had no scar tissue and he had fully rebuilt all new ligaments, right? So I was like, oh my word. And so we started at 90 days, we started ponying him. Behind another horse and riding him. And at 6 months, he was back where I could ride him. We started training for endurance rides again. And he is now a 41-year-old, perfectly healthy pasture pony outside my gate. He's deaf as a post. He has no peripheral vision. Most of his teeth are gone. But he greets me out there every morning. And he still trots around like he's all that, trying to convince the mares next door that he could help, right? So that was my intro to the miracle that is light therapy. And I'd already started learning holistic nutrition and started working with all sorts of different energetic medicines. I'd become a Reiki master, all of those things, ozone therapies and kinesiology. And I was working on horses and dogs. But the more I started working with the light, the more excited I became. And so I still use a lot of those other modalities, but my one job now is being a lighthouse, kind of shining light about what we can do very inexpensively with no negative side effects with different colors of light and how we deliver them. And that has just become my passion. And I don't have arthritis anymore, and I'm in my 60s, and I can do far more at 64 than I could ever do when I was 32. And I credit that to light.
Well, that's fantastic. I think it's interesting when people are, when new therapies come out, and it's like we'll spend whatever we need to on our pets, on our dogs.
Yeah.
It's like there is, to an extent, but it's like, yeah, we want all the new technologies. But it's interesting, like, but we're less forthright with spending that money on ourselves for our own wellness, and it's like that's like pulling teeth. But when you look on Amazon now, all you see are these masks to get rid of the wrinkles, which is not what I wanted to talk to you about. So what is the magic? Like if we're saying we wrap the horse's legs in these, are they special lights? What are they?
They're special in that they are specific colors or specific wavelengths of light that can be absorbed by the cell. So depending on what chromophores, or what color is in that cell, will determine which light can be absorbed by that cell. All right. And when we use red, so mostly it's visible wavelengths of light. So not your ultraviolet and below. And near infrared is also absorbed by the water in our body. But above that and below that really aren't absorbed. And people will say, why can't you just walk out in the sun and get this? I said, well, you can't stay in the sun long enough to get enough of the beneficial light without having been damaged by much of the UV rays and a lot of the negative wavelengths that are coming in. So we can target and deliver just what we know to just the kinds of cells we want to give more energy to with different specific wavelengths of light. And then when we pulse that light, we get even additional level of benefit. And there's different pulsing techniques and levels and so on for different responses from the body. So light is, back when I first started in the early 90s, the FDA had not approved it for humans yet. They didn't think that it did anything to the body. And we really didn't have any good science on it. It's just now in the last 4 or 5 years that the science around what is happening deep down into the cell is starting to come to light. And it's that I read it. I was doing a research study, like going through all the different research and things to help. We were doing a research study just before COVID hit on healing up wisdom tooth pockets when they remove your wisdom tooth, and using targeted light to heal that up much more quickly. We're working with a dentist who is one of the experts in the world on photobiomodulation, the big fancy word for light therapy in the mouth. And I was reading all these different research papers, and one of the researchers had the most brilliant, non-scientific way of explaining light. And I glommed onto it, and I love it. And it's just that light gives each cell the energy it needs to do its own job better.
Hey there, if you're enjoying this conversation and are passionate about evidence-based care in labour, the best way to support our work is to subscribe and share this episode with other amazing women in your life. Your support is so important to us and helps us reach more mothers with empowering content. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button and spread the love.
So just like if you need to recharge the battery on your phone, recharge, whatever batteries in your car, we have to recharge our own batteries as well. But we have become, we live indoors far more than we used to. We used to be outside much more. And so we would get our vitamin D, we would get our sunlight at levels that we could absorb that extra energy. We ate food that was more nutritious. We had other ways of getting energy. And if you think, so when we're, especially in this world where there's so many chemicals and oxidative foods and food colorings and things in our diet and around us in the air and the water, those tend to add toxins into our body that clog up the cells and prevent the cells from taking in oxygen. When the cell can't take in the oxygen, it can't create ATP, which is the energy that runs our body. And so one of the primary things that light does is that when it's absorbed into the cell, into the mitochondria of the cell, red and to some extent near infrared light kick all those toxins and that extra junk out, bringing in more oxygen so that the cell can then go back to work. And when I was in high school, in college, I was taking biology. I was going to be a veterinarian. I had all the different biology classes, and you get the picture of the cell, right? And it would show the different pieces, and it showed this lovely mitochondria. And this is mitochondria makes our energy. So I always thought, okay, that one mitochondria is doing this. Why is the cell still alive if doing anything if that mitochondria is clogged up? They didn't tell us that each cell might have 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 mitochondria in one cell. So some of them may be clogged and others may not be clogged. And so it's sluggish and tired, but it's still flowing, kind of like us. So as we kick the toxins out and more of the mitochondria in each cell can start zooming up and producing more energy, the cell can detox itself better, it can replicate itself better, and it can do its own job better. So Heart cells do heart jobs better. Nerve cells do nerve jobs better. And overall, we provide more energy to the entire body as we deliver this light at a rate that doesn't heat the tissue up, but does help soak the garden with water, so to speak, soak our bodies with light at a long, low, slow speed. And that's really why they call it low-level light therapy. High level, you get a laser that'll cut through tissue. Low level delivers it at a rate where the cell doesn't heat up.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I've seen in some of your videos that you do always talk about, low and slow.
Long, low, and
Whereas
slow.
there's long, low, and
Yeah,
slow.
exactly. There's nothing wrong with using the laser if you know what you're doing with it, but I can tell you that most people don't know what they're doing with it. And most of the laser products that you could buy over the counter, Amazon, Alibaba, Temu, whatever they are, most of them, those lasers are one or more laser pointers, the little 5 milliwatt laser pointer you can go buy at the dollar store, okay, kind of rubber banded together and stuck into a plastic holder to deliver that light. So you're not really, it's not anywhere near what a class 4 laser is. So your surgeon, not in surgery, but for healing, your doctors, your dentists, your others using what they call a cold laser those are delivering enough light that you have to have very specific training to use them and not overwhelm the cells and not heat anything or damage things. The class 2 and the class 3B lasers are designed to deliver it again, low and slow, like those little laser pointers. So there's a real difference in lasers out there. Okay. So what you can buy over the counter without a license to use it, you're not going to hurt yourself with it. You may actually not do a lot of benefit, or you might do a lot of benefit, depending on who's put it together and how quality the diodes and the lasers and the insides are. Okay, so there's everything out there, but long, low, and slow for regenerating tissue, for soaking the tissue with extra light, just like you would soak your garden with water. You're better off with a soaker hose than a power wand, right? When you go out with a big power waterer to clean your boat, if you put that down into your garden, you damage your garden. That power wand is equivalent to a high-level class 4 laser. So I prefer to use the soaker hose method. Pads, to some extent panels, even lamps, even just not heat lamps, not infrared heat lamps, far infrared, but near infrared, again, they're called like a grow bulb. They're just exactly like what you would grow on your garden. It's going to deliver it at a low level of light, and that's going to soak the extra photons in. And it soaks in at the surface, and people are like, well, red light only goes, a couple of millimeters in initially. I don't care about initial penetration. I care about saturation. Deliver it at a level that it's not digging up the garden, it's not damaging the plants, and it's slowly soaking in. Same thing when we use a pad or a low-level device on our body, it's slowly soaking those in. So as the top cells fill with photons, they share them with their neighbors, and it just keeps going further in and further out. So that's why I like.
I love that. I love that analogy of soaking the garden and soaking the body in light. I think that's a really simple way, I guess, to understand soaking all of your cells. So when we talk about long and low, like let's just, for somebody who has fell over this afternoon and grazed their knee and is a bit bumped and bruised around the knee, what would you recommend, and how long would you recommend? Because from what I've heard, if you have, I guess, an injury, like as in we have an exposed wound, getting the light on it as soon as possible is really important.
It is. The only time we say wait a day is if we think there's a brain injury. If there's an internal brain bleed, like a concussion, we want to wait till all the bleeding is done, because light therapy, one of its primary actions is that it opens up circulation and brings in a tremendous amount of new blood supply. Well, you don't want to do that in the brain if you've already got if it's already swelling. You're going to wait. So you wait, according to your doctor, 24, 36, 72 hours. Then get the light on it. But everywhere else, even if you have really what seems to be a bad gash, you're bleeding badly, go ahead and get the light on it as soon as possible. I personally would either use one of my torches where I can get it right, depending on the size of the wound, or I'd wrap it in like a red and near infrared light therapy wrap, because it's going to bring in more circulation, which is going to flush dirt out of the wound. But it's also good by doing that, bring in all of the new repair materials you need. Light actually speeds the inflammatory process. People are like, well, it stops inflammation. No, it doesn't stop it. It speeds it up. We need inflammation. When you get a wound, inflammation is all that red and crystal and gnarliness around the edge. That's telling the body where the edges of the wound are, and you need to bring your collagen here, and we need to start building a scab, right? We get that much more quickly and get past the painful portion of the wound by getting the light on it immediately. And we've seen this in huge horses with nasty wounds. Get the light on it really, really fast with a pad. And sometimes within a week, you can barely see where that was ever at. You know, especially if it was a big flap of skin and we put the flap back on, we get the light on immediately, it reattaches. Okay. So there's getting light on, whether you're doing surgery, getting light before and after surgery is amazing.
I was about to ask you that. Yeah.
You can prepare your body for the surgery that's about to happen so that it'll already have the white blood cells there to fight infection. It'll already have the building materials there to fight infection. Open up the lymph system. We won't get the swelling. We won't get the inflammation and pain as much if we use light before. And then as soon as we're done with the surgery, we get the light on again.
Yes. Yeah. I hadn't thought of it really from a pre-surgical standpoint, but it does make sense. You're going to increase the circulation. You're going to, have everything kind of ready for this trauma that's going to happen to the body.
Exactly.
But
I guess it's more prepared and ready to go.
Yeah. That's really fascinating. I have to look more about it, because where I'm coming from, I kind of, my background is midwifery, but I work with women from like the very beginning of, who were dealing with fertility challenges. And as you were mentioning earlier about, the a couple of 100 to 1,000 mitochondria. And I think the ova has something like 200,000 mitochondria. I think it's like one of those cells that's like reproductive cells, and the heart and the brain are like, they have the most mitochondria.
Everything's already in there, exactly. And different colors of light and different pulsing of light they've shown it affects different part of the egg, because different pulsing will address the mesenteric, the endoderm, ectoderm, mesoderm. All of those respond to a different pulsing rate, and each one of them respond differently to light within the egg, which is amazing.
Yeah, it is, and I've looked a little bit about the research that was happening in Japan, and now I think they're doing quite a lot of it in Denmark. I think it is, using lights and seeing like really significant improvements in fertility, especially women who have had long-term infertility or are like, I think one of the women, or several women, were like over 50, and they were starting to see, these women were menopausal and were starting to have cycles return. So I think it's exciting to see what we can do to support women in this area.
I went perimenopausal in my 30s. And, I did a number of things with different herbs, wild yam and so on, and reestablished. When I got my nutrition back in my early 30s, I was very sick. And I started off in life with very irregular menstrual cycles. Once every 6 months, whether I needed it or not. But then it would last for 5 weeks. Not fun when you're 13 or 14 years old, right? So later I got into my 30s, and I started getting better nutrition and started learning more about what my body needed. And here came my regular periods. Okay, great. But then I went perimenopausal, in my late 40s, and then got into my 50s. And I was starting to do more with targeted light. All right. Really, acupuncture with light, what we call photopuncture. And all of a sudden I had my period again. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm 55, 56 years old. I don't want my period now. Thank you very much. But so it rejuvenated, re-euthanized my whole, reproductive system, which, my husband was like, really? No, we're not doing that. But we've had it. And then, so we use light for many different feminine health issues, just general pain anywhere in the pelvic region, right? Whether it's vaginal or not, when you use light, there's tools now you can use that are vaginal lights that go in and take that light deep into the pelvic region, which is awesome because especially those of us carrying a little more weight there, I can put a pad over my belly all I want. Not a lot of that light initially is going to make it all the way down into the deep regions that are protected by bone and all of that. So when we use a vaginal wand, it gets usually red and blue light up into between the hips, up into the pelvic region. Endometriosis, fibroid pain, those who are dealing with urinary issues. And, we can't make any claims about cancer. And certainly every manufacturer is terrified that you use your light on anybody with cancer because early on in the research, 50 years ago, they started testing light on cancer cells and they grew, but it was all in a petri dish. It was outside of all of the other things going on in the body. And most of the research that's in the last 10 to 15 years is showing that light is very safe to use with those with cancer. But please don't take that from me. If somebody who's dealing with cancer, you go back to your doctor and the oncologist and all of that for deciding what you want to do. As educated as possible, and you decide for yourself whether you're going to use light. But adenomas, which are a non-cancerous tumor in the bladder, I know people that have helped. It may not get rid of the adenoma, but it helps with the circulation, it helps with the pain relief, etc. So there's lots of different reasons. Yeast infections, dribbling. That was with me as I got older and I'm heavy. You stand up and you dribble a little bit. Started using the feminine health lights. Did not happen anymore, right? And there's so much you can do. Women with postpartum depression, helping to get them, this kind of thing. And I'm kind of jumping ahead because we really haven't talked much about acupuncture with light. But what I love about light is it gives people a way to do their own acupuncture, right? Activate energy points themselves without the hassle of having to get up. And I don't want to take anything away from acupuncturists. I love them. They're wonderful. We have a lot of them that are practitioners, right? But if we can get and activate our own points on a regular basis, we can have better overall health. We can have better mental and emotional health. We can help get better sleep, lowered stress, better digestion, all of those things. And as women, we can help with hot flashes. We can help with fertility. We can help with cracked nipples after birth. We can help with postpartum depression by getting better sleep, better recovery after the birth.
Exactly, because that's what was a big thing for me, because I was, you read so much, not that you just read about it, you have the experience when you've had kids that of this postpartum depletion and brain fog and absolute exhaustion. And I kept thinking, oh, I think these lights would just be brilliant.
Yes, exactly. Just
for new moms.
If you activate 4 points on both sides of your body, so 8 points, 30 seconds apiece, 4 minutes when you go to bed, it's going to help flood your body with the neurotransmitters that shift you into a rest and digest state. You sleep down all the way into REM, right? You get deep sleep. So that's when your digestion happens. That's when your physical recovery happens. That's when you get mental recovery happening, because you've been through usually, a multi-day ordeal. And not only did you have to deal with the baby, you had to deal with the husband, and you had to deal with the family members, and you had to deal with getting the house and, everybody there's so much on your plate.
Yeah.
Giving yourself permission to get, even if it's only 4 hours before you have to get feeding again, to get down to true relaxed REM sleep, you're going to be able to do all of the things you have to do as a mother and wife better, or non-wife, whatever that is, right? You're going to be able to cope better. And if your nipples aren't hurting and your milk lets down and you keep your stress levels down, all of that becomes easier.
Yeah. I'm thinking mastitis would probably be the perfect. I'm thinking would mastitis, well, I'm trying to think if that would be, what would be helpful for mastitis? Would that be
Well,
green light
uh,
or blue for,
use
well,
what you've got.
yeah, like
Okay. Don't overthink what
right.
color. Most tools are going to be red or red and near infrared. If you're lucky and you have some blue and green and other colors available, great. But what's going to be most helpful is opening up the lymph drainage, right? All your milk glands are coming right in here to the um, lymph system. That's why women get these nice big lymph
Mm,
pockets under their arms from having
yeah.
breastfed. And so we open up this lymph drainage. I use pads. I love putting a big pad folded under the armpit and opening that up. Using pads over the chest because this is where all your lymph comes in as drains, is right over your collarbone
Mm,
back into the circulatory system. So open up the chest with light. You get much less congestion. You don't see people getting the mastitis. We saw this originally on cows and horses. We just you could treat the mastitis very quickly on cows by there's dairy farmers now that have the cows go in and get washed right before they're milked, but they also get UV light to kill infection and red light to soothe and
mm,
drop things down on very, very advanced dairy farms. Okay, so all of this is coming together. There's more and
yeah.
more, and now we're getting more research into women's. Women are starting to stand up and demand it. Yes, we do.
Yeah, we've waited long
Yeah.
enough in every aspect of
Yeah.
science.
And, social media is fabulous for this. It's empowering women to say, no, you're not going to give me an IUD without giving me some pain relief. You're not going to go do that scraping without some pain relief. The men will get pain relief if you even, go in and cup their balls. But women, we're supposedly there's no nerve endings in our cervix. That's not true.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
exactly. Sorry, you're getting me off on a whole tangent, but yeah.
Yeah, no, but it's really, I think it's really appropriate. And one of the reasons we're having this conversation is because I want to hear from women who are out here using light and in ways to benefit women's health. Because, as you know, women's health we've been ignored for way too long. I want to just put a little bit of focus on, we have this, emerging therapy that has so many benefits
Right.
I just think for women, for moms, I think I'd read something recently about a dentist that was using light therapy with young kids that are really nervous about getting injections. And of course, I think mother on the planet has probably had that experience of taking a little one to the dentist and freaking
Right.
out about,
Right.
injections. And I think, oh, here we go again. We have these, torches at home. We can, I'm thinking let them use it before they go into the dentist and they played with it and they know how to
And
use
they
it and
can
we
they
can
can
do
be
it right
activating
after as
points
well.
that calm them down for themselves, give them their own torch. They're
Mm,
perfectly safe and they can be doing those for themselves. Oh, definitely. And whole other areas, just having it as your home first aid kit. Got a cut, get some blue light on that,
yeah,
prevent it getting infected. Got, all of the reasons to carry this little wonderful, these little medical devices with you or have a bigger system in your home. If you're dealing with seniors
yeah,
with dementia and you want to support the brain or brain fog in our mothers or after chemo or whatever that is. We don't treat disease with light. We help address symptoms. And the three things that the FDA will let us say about almost any light therapy tool is that it lowers pain, increases circulation, and stimulates cellular repair. Okay, that's about 90-95% of fixing almost anything, right? If you didn't hurt,
yeah,
you'd move more and you'd have better mental,
yes,
you'd be able to do the things so you wouldn't beat up on yourself. So that helps with the depression. It helps with the mental clarity. If you had better circulation, you wouldn't see the neuropathies and the ghost pain and the things,
yeah,
and you'd have better skin and you'd like how you looked better, etc. If you have better cellular repair, you're going to heal from things much more quickly, or you're never going to end up knowing you had an issue because your body has the tools it needs to fix those things before they ever show up as a disease, right?
yeah, as a
So
problem. Yeah, you mentioned earlier on, when we were talking about your horse, about adhesions. So one area that I think the light therapy could be really helpful for, as we know, the cesarean rate continues to grow around the world. And there's lots of discussion to be had about why that is
Yes, yes.
happening. But while it is increasing the risks to women's health and babies' health, because every subsequent cesarean a woman has puts her at higher risk
Well,
of miscarriage, and all of these adhesions. And I've seen some cesareans that have, a woman that was having the cesarean after, I think this was her fourth or fifth cesarean, and it took such a long time. Now, for some women, they won't have a choice, but there is this focus, and especially here in the US and a lot of other kind of, developed countries, that, women are being steered away from vaginal birth after having a previous cesarean, even though it's been shown to be a safe
right.
option for mothers and babies. So, but what I remember when I was training as a midwife, and I was at this cesarean, and it took them, they had a vascular surgeon there. It took them a long time to actually get through all of these adhesions. It's like this spider web,
Right.
and it's attached to different organs. I think like this is a significant issue for, especially as the rate continues to grow. So do you think there's a place there for not just for healing of the cesarean wound,
But
the
preventing
incision
and
and the
then breaking.
scar,
So
but
if
the
you have
adhesions?
the adhesions, if you have that scar tissue built up, we know that light can break that apart. How do you break apart scars? You make sure that there's vascular supply. You get capillary beds growing, because the difference between a scar and healthy tissue is a scar has no blood vessels, right? So the way to break the
Yeah.
scar is to create new capillaries, create new blood vessels, breaking apart that tissue. Well, one of the primary mechanisms of action that we know of, that science has finally proven with light therapy, is angiogenesis. It stimulates the production of new capillaries, new blood vessels. So as we use light over or inside of that area, that light starts to produce, better circulation, lower pain, and the production of new blood vessels to break apart the scar tissue. Yeah, there's a lot more research on vaginal light for the scar tissue that comes from endometriosis than there is from postpartum, because there's this fear, even there's this fear of using light, which is really funny, because as soon as those babies make it into the into the ward, they come to now the nurses carry your baby off. They're using and have used for many, many decades blue light to make sure that the
Yeah.
babies don't get jaundice, to get their circulation going. NICU, the whole NICU is just flooded with photobiomodulation, right? So
Yes.
somehow
Yeah.
only that subset of doctors and nurses that are working with pediatrics and the tiny infants understand light therapy. The rest, especially in the US, the rest of the medical world goes, oh, there's no research on that. It's like, look, there's 10,000 papers. How many would you like? Right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Big Pharma doesn't teach them about the benefits of photobiomodulation, because Big Pharma doesn't control that trigger, right? So Big Pharma provides most of the money for educating doctors, and it's only when nothing
Yes.
works that insurance, and nothing else, no drug solution works, that to basically hide symptoms, that Big Pharma has to allow insurance to pay for a different approach. So, orphans, well, Parkinson's. There aren't a lot of drugs that do anything or control Parkinson's. So there's a tremendous amount of money for research in photobiomodulation for Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, things.
Yes.
Women's health just is unfunded anyway, right? So
Yeah.
this is,
Yeah. I'd looked at a paper a couple of months ago, and I think it was on rats, I think it was, but they were rats that were, I'm not sure how it was done. They were pregnant, and they created brain injury in these baby rats. And it was about, can light travel through bone and everything. And it was a really positive study. And I had emailed Dr. Hammond to say, okay, so we're showing that this can help brain injury in these oxygen deprived baby rats. So could this apply? I know they're rats, but could this be applying to babies that are born with with hypoxia. And there's, this is a significant issue
Right.
in obstetrics, that how are we looking after these babies? Well, we were doing the cooling helmets, and I'm like, okay, and these babies have a soft spot. Couldn't light
And from
maybe be
two
helpful
aspects
here?
of light therapy, we could be helping, because there's the saturation, the photobiomodulation, right? That they can be absorbing the light and it could be helping with the circulation of the brain and hypoxia. But also recognize this is an incredibly powerful acupoint. So 30 seconds
Oh,
would activate a tremendous amount of circulation and opening. From a Chinese medicine perspective, this is the yang of all yang. This is the master point for all of the external energy on the body. Okay. So
wow.
for when you get into doctors that are using Chinese medicine more, there's even more reason to be hitting the fontanelle on the baby. Okay. So is that being done in today's US care? No, but it is being done in other areas and other parts of the world. So it was interesting. The World Light Therapy Conference this year was in India. So I got, there was a little bit more of that Asian medicine influence. And I had a really interesting conversation with some of the locals there, the local physicians the whole conference was on photobiomodulation, but we had students that were specializing in podiatric care, dental care. It was co-sponsored by the different medical hospitals, and there's different training all in this one university town. And so it was really interesting because they're also learning some Chinese medicine at the same time. So we're going to see, places like India, and much of the photobiomodulation research now is coming out of Brazil, Australia, South Africa, places that the FDA and big pharma don't control what's being learned and taught and studied. So it's really cool.
So at the conference, if you can share with us, what were there any new trends that you're seeing?
I didn't see much in the way of new trends. There was a fascinating presentation on someone in Brazil who's successfully using laser therapy on poisonous snake bites. And I think which was talk about, that was something I wasn't expecting. And one of the researchers or practitioners actually from the Scandinavian region was talking about the success they're having with using the light with their senior patients, because their network of care includes till you die, right? You can have care in your home. You can have care wherever you are. You still, the caregivers still don't get very much time, right? She says, I've got 18 minutes or whatever, but she's putting them into a parasympathetic state. She's working with them with light, and they're having much better quality of life and longer life. Less aches and pains, more mental clarity, longer, because they're getting this care with their senior care. And we had a really great conversation on then moving that in. What if you could take 3 of those minutes and activate the parasympathetic nerves before you even started anything else? And she's like, oh my God, they'd be so much more rested. They'd be more calm and more open for everything that we're doing. I didn't see a lot of of course, there were a lot of breakout sessions. So there was things I didn't get to see yet. A lot of it was dental, and I've worked so closely with the dentists. There weren't a lot of differences. It's just seeing it open up, which is exciting. Same thing on the neuropathy and so on. There was one presentation from one of the PTI members who's a dentist in India, who did a whole presentation on activating acupuncture points with his laser for his TMJ clients, and to release the TMJ before they went into that. So I learned more new things at Walt in France 6 years ago, but that was when a whole bunch of new stuff had just hit, right? Like cell-free mitochondria and other advances in the science that are coming forward. So
it's every time I have my alerts set up on my Gmail, so on photobiomodulation and all the little things. I'm like, I'm like, okay, and there's like 10 more papers being published or 20 more.
And you want to make it worse, also put in the search term LLLT. Because because the old researchers still aren't using the term photobiomodulation. So then you get twice as many papers coming in. It's amazing. We try to keep those going up to our library on our website.
So yeah, and I have to say your website is just such a great resource for the
Thank
papers
you.
and for people looking to buy tools. And so let's for somebody who has, I don't know, dental issues and their dentist doesn't have, a nice snappy $30,000 laser in their office. What, based on your product, what would you recommend? Like, what would you recommend people have just as their basic first aid kit at home?
Well, we actually have what we call a dental kit, which is our
Okay.
premier, the Red Plus 2 torch, which has as much light in it as what's coming out of that, which is actually more like $65,000 laser in the dentist's office. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Um, it has as much light coming out of it as a class 4 laser, but because it's LED, it's safe. You can put it directly into your eye. You can use it. It won't heat anything up. It won't damage anything. And then the dental kit is it prepackaged with the fiber optic probe so that it can go deep into the mouth. It can go up into the nasal passages, into the
Mm.
ear, that kind of thing. So that you could do a build a kit and always build any color torch you want and add a probe and courses to it. Or you could go straight to that dental kit and it's already that's the most common starter, even though you're not using it for dental issues maybe, but it's the Red Plus 2 torch and the fiber optic probe. And then of course, all of our purchases come with an online course to introduce people to what photobiomodulation is and what are the different colors and the different types of tools and the different applications and the way light's being used. We teach forms of light therapy that do not require a medical license. Okay. So people can take our classes, become certified, whether or not they have a college degree, whether or not they are a licensed medical professional. And then we have a lot of medical professionals coming to also take our classes because there's really no other place they can get their staff trained in best practices of using light. So our courses go through all of those, and then our advanced courses are the photopuncture courses, how to activate points and come up with the right recipes and so on. The
So somebody wouldn't have to be an
Not at
acupuncturist
all. Not at all. In
first.
fact, we have
Okay.
hundreds of recipes, what we call recipe charts, for people to
Mm.
activate their own acupuncture points for low functioning thyroid, for digestive issues, for headaches and migraines, for, any of these different day-to-day issues that are going on. Are we treating cancer? No. Are we claiming that we can cure anything? Absolutely not. We're supporting
Hmm.
people to bring the energy flow in their body back into balance so the body can heal itself, if that makes sense. And what you can do,
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're creating the optimal conditions for the body to
exactly.
do what it
And a
knows
lot
how
of
to
times
do,
you can
really.
get,
Yeah.
for example, we just did, I was speaking at a conference in November in Atlanta, Georgia. And one of the gentlemen who was also speaking, he was another speaker. He's a cardiologist from New York. He was just moving down to Florida, and he spoke before me, and then came in and he'd seen my presentation, and he came kind of sauntering over by the booth later, just kind of looking what we were doing. And I was taking pads. Oh, I had somebody under the pads at our booth, and he's just kind of going, "Yeah, well, And I said, "You got anything that hurts?" And he stopped. And he said, "Well, yeah, I've got a bad shoulder. It's been bad for years, though. It's not, you could tell he's a very athletic man, done lots of physical fitness, and he had done something to his shoulder. He didn't
Mm.
even tell me what it was. He just said, and he couldn't lift his
Right.
shoulder over about here. So I said,
Mm.
well, my pads are in use right now, but let me grab, and I took a couple of torches and I activated points that I happen to know are how good for shoulder release, right? Bringing the tension of the different sinews that hold everything in place, kind of balancing that tension. And I think I spent 3 or 4 minutes talking to him and activating these points. No big deal. And we stopped and we're talking. And all of a sudden he went, wait a minute. And he went, oh. And it had not gone up for 3 years. And he says, how did you do that in less
Oh,
than 4
wow.
minutes, right? Or 5 minutes or whatever it was. And I said, well, I know the points, right? And he's like, how do I learn those? And he left there that weekend with a professional set of torches, which is 5 torches and the fiber optic probe. And then he also came back and he got some pads. And then he called me afterwards and got a full set of the Inlight professional big system because he put it in his office in Naples. So it took that short period of time. And we had a class on Sunday at that particular conference, and he came to the class and kind of sucked my brain dry about how he would use it for his cardiology patients, even if it was just improving their circulation and making them more comfortable.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. It does not have to be going back to college for 6 years to use this. It's very straightforward. There's never been a negative side effect from using low-level light therapy. You may have people get no results. You may have people get detox headaches, right? Especially the people using panels or beds or what I call ambient light tools that flood the entire body that's facing the light with light. Well, then you're giving every cell in the body what it needs to detox all at once. And if you haven't already opened up the lymph nodes and flushed and supported the organs of elimination, people can get sick. But they can do that even if they try to start a cleanse and they don't know what they're doing, right? So we always we teach best practices, especially when dealing with chronic conditions. The longer somebody's been sick, those people that have a cup of herbal tea and the next thing you know they have a headache. Well, those are the people you start very slowly. We may spend the first few sessions with those people just opening lymph drainage and shifting them into that rest and digest state, because people with chronic health conditions get stuck in fight or flight. So they never get a good night's sleep. They don't digest and poop well. They don't eliminate well. And they're always, if people recognize themselves in the description, if you're always triggered easily, if you're helicoptering and anxious about everything that's around, if you wake up 3 times during the night and can't get back to sleep, if you're always having trouble with irritable bowel or whatever, these are signs that you're stuck in sympathetic. Okay. And we can easily activate acupuncture points to start shifting you back into that rest and digest state. We need sympathetic. We need, when the saber-toothed tiger comes running after us, we got to be able to run.
Yeah.
But when the tiger is no longer there, we have to be able to come back into rest and digest. And we lose that ability with chronic pain, with PTSD, very, very severe shocks to the system, or even constant wearing shocks like, abuse and things like that. We can help you get back. People can take back control of their own health by using light for themselves when they feel safe at their pace. So they can use it in their home, or practitioners can use it in their practice to help their patients get further faster.
So why isn't it being used by everybody? This is the $1 million question.
Because insurance companies, people they think they need medical insurance to cover their costs for medicine, right? Big Pharma owns health insurance. Big Pharma does not make light therapy devices. So Big Pharma doesn't want to pay for photobiomodulation unless they'll pay if you go to your dentist and he pulls out his laser because the dentist kind of demand it. And so this is one of the arguments I was making, and one of the reasons I went to India for the WALT conference this year was to try to get through to this is the standard refrain. The people, the manufacturers are griping that they're 30, 35 years in and insurance is not paying for their devices. Doctors are complaining because it's not covered, that it's not paid for as a service. All of that is an issue. And I kind of stood up from the floor and said, but you're missing the point. Acupuncture, chiropractic, massage, physical therapy, none of that was paid for by insurance until people demanded it. And they can't demand it if they don't know about it. So we need an army of educators and certified light therapists offering these services And yeah, you may have to show that you have taken a test. You may have showed that you're qualified to do this in a way that's going to be better than just buying a $100 laser tool off Amazon.
Yeah.
But most of us can buy the tools to do dentistry ourselves. Do we? No, because we don't know what we're doing with it. Right? But if you have a
Yeah.
tool that's non-invasive, never had a negative side effect, can be used, you can't do it wrong. You can only just not get a result if you don't do it right. Okay?
Sure.
Then we have people demanding that their insurance starts paying for this. Especially, and insurance does pay for it if a dentist gives you the prescription for oral mucositis and things that there are no pills that will cure. Right? So it's coming, but it's coming slowly. So we need an army of people talking about this, teaching others what it can do. And if you don't want to do it for yourself, great, go to a certified light therapist, but demand that your insurance start covering it. Okay.
Yeah.
Especially when working with things like Alzheimer's and dementia and traumatic brain injury. It's now being used by numerous VAs around the country for traumatic brain injury. It's being used by the NFL for traumatic brain injury. Okay. We need to demand this for, my niece that fell off the barn and hurt her head. Okay. She deserves to be able to have light for her traumatic brain injury as well. We have to demand that our insurance starts covering, and the code word is photobiomodulation. Balancing the biological processes of the body with light. Photobiomodulation. That's the key word to ask for. And your insurance company won't, the person on the other end of the phone won't have any idea what that is. But the more we demand it, it's going to take time. It'll speed up a lot faster if we all start demanding it. We demand that our health caregivers know what it is. My husband got a really, really bad case of food poisoning a few months ago. And I mean bad. He was in the hospital from it bad. And nothing that the hospital was giving him was fixing it. He couldn't sit up. He had terrible vertigo. He couldn't hold food down. He was dehydrated. Nothing was working. And I was in that hospital with my lights. I had pads on his belly, which would cause his sodium levels got really, really off because he was so dehydrated, and he had spasms and seizures from it. And I'd get light on him, and that would calm down. I could get light on points for nausea and vertigo, and that would get better. And luckily, the emergency room physician was like, oh, keep using that. Like, he recognized the benefits of the light therapy. Some of the nurses gave me weird looks, but they were too overwhelmed to come in and tell me not to do it. They were swamped that day. And, when they stop and say, what the hell are you doing? Tell them, right? Educate them. I'm using targeted light. Boom. And the more we target, the better.
Yeah, I just think, I just find it interesting that there's so much pushback from, the medical world when we know how beneficial light is for babies, and this is not something that's new. And we've seen scanners being used in supermarkets and on the LEDs on your Christmas lights. This is not dangerous.
The interesting thing is that light therapy is becoming a huge thing right now on TikTok and Instagram. And where we're positioning, we being Photonic Therapy Institute, we're positioning ourselves as not yet another sales pitch. I'm not trying to sell you a device at all. I'm here to teach you how to use whatever device you've bought to get better results from it, right? We're educating you about all these things that people are trying to sell you, whether it be a panel, which is a great way to get the nutrient of light, or a torch where you can get very fast systemic responses but not cover very much of the body at one time, or a pad that you can place exactly where you need it, or a grow lamp. If you're dead broke and want to get a start, hey, use a grow bulb, right? Which ones are good? We're going to be talking tomorrow about which ones are good and how to judge, how to buy what tool and what you need it for, and fit that, do the best you can in the budget that you have.
Yeah, I know. Can't say enough. Your website and the services that you guys provide. I've been to several of the office hours. I'm a member. I'm a lighthouse
Lighthouse,
typer or
yeah.
something. I don't know, but just so I can watch all the office hours. And there is I just love that there is such a generous community, I guess, for it's not and it's not the sales pitch. It's not you have to buy. We can only tell you it's going to work if you use our products,
That
and
always just,
it's I think it's meeting people
yeah,
where
that
they're at,
annoys
you know?
the Jesus out of me when people sell by putting
Yeah.
other products down, or uh, th there's so much disinformation on lasers versus LED.
Mm,
There's people out there saying
yes.
laser doesn't go any deeper, right? And every time I come across one of those, I hand them 5 papers that show that's not true. And I just don't even go into how deep it goes. I just ignore the argument completely and say, I don't care about penetration, I care about saturation. And they go, "What, well, what's that?"
Mm,
Right? What's that? And so now they
mm,
have to stop and reword their arguments. And the body doesn't care if it's coherent light with a laser or non-coherent light with an LED. It cares what color you're using, how much light you give it, and how fast you give it. Fast is not better. More is not always better.
mm.
There are sweet spots, but you
Yeah.
can be around that area and be fine.
Yeah. Absolutely fantastic. Kay, thank you so much for joining me today and letting me pick your brain. I'll be on tomorrow's call to probably pick it a little bit
Excellent.
more. Um, but please, yeah, share where people can find you and your tools and
Oh,
all of that great information and
thank
training
you.
as well.
Okay, so it's photonictherapyinstitute.com. All right. We are on Facebook and Instagram, and we have lots of training on YouTube. If you just look for Photonic Therapy Institute on YouTube, there's lots of videos going up for helping with humans and horses and light and just knowing the science behind what's going on. All right. So LinkedIn, if you're professional, you want to know more, we do more of a professional output on LinkedIn, social media everywhere, and we answer questions. We have office hours every Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. You can come for free every week. If you want to watch the recordings, you become a supporting member for $10 a month. We just want people to know about light. And our commitment is to building a community of people that are going to teach everyone else that light can be beneficial before you reach for that opiate, before you reach for that painkiller or
Yes.
surgery, before you reach for the surgery, try light. There's never a reason not to try it. It's not
Yeah.
going to hurt you. And especially if you use quality tools in the right way, come learn how to do it. You'll be glad that you invested a little bit of money in keeping yourself and your family and your animals healthy. So
That's
photonictherapyinstitute.com.
it.
Thanks so much, hon.
And yeah, and reminding everyone who's listening that you're worth it. You're worth the
Oh my, yes.
investment of time and energy and money on these tools we're talking
Right.
long-term health as well as the little,
And you can't
you
take
know,
care of
bumps
anybody
and
else if
bruises
you
that
don't take
everybody
care
deals
of
with.
yourself. You can't, that's
Yes.
especially women. We tend to put ourselves last. When we
Mhm.
first
Yeah.
introduced the vaginal wands, and there's been a few different names as there's been different manufacturers, but they're essentially all the same thing. When we first did what we now call the feminine health light, the primary purchasers were the men because the women wouldn't spend that money for themselves. But the men knew if their wife felt better, happy wife, happy
Hmm.
life, right?
Everybody's
And
feeling
so
better.
we'd be feeling better if she was feeling better. And it's usually the husbands or the partners that were buying those wands. Now we're starting to see a shift. Women, we're reaching more women, especially of older
Mm,
age, who have dryness or dripping or cracking or
mm,
just painful intercourse. And they're like, okay, I'll invest in that
sure.
for myself. And it's been a
Yeah.
real sea change in how people are starting to view the different tools, that they're not just an investment for themselves, they're an investment for your marriage, your family, your everybody around you to have kind of a,
Yeah.
in my
Yes.
purse. I never leave home without having at least a torch with me. And I probably used
Yeah.
targeted light on 30 or 40 people in India that I'd never met before. Who, my driver was crimping around. One of the other speakers
Mm.
she had an allergic reaction and couldn't stop sneezing and needed to go on the stage in a couple of minutes. So we shut down the allergic reaction and she could breathe and she could get up and give her presentation. So having lights with you, and they're like, oh, you have a light with you on, all these people are leaving their labs with big lasers.
Yeah.
I'm like, don't have one in your pocket?
Yes.
Of course you should have one in your pocket. Yeah, would you like to use mine?
Mm.
And it was great. Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thanks again.
Tracy.
This has been great. And we will
All
talk
right.
again soon.
Thanks, darling.
Thanks for
Bye-bye.
joining me.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Remember, empowerment begins with knowledge. If you enjoyed our time together and want more content like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. So stay inspired, stay informed, and until next time, take care of yourself.